24 Hertz, the cinema standard. Every movie you've ever watched in a theater was shot at 24 frames per second. Every Hollywood blockbuster, every Netflix film, every cinematic production, 24 frames per second. And this is where most people get confused between frame rate and refresh rate. Frame rate is how many pictures per second the movie was filmed at. Refresh rate is how many times per second your TV redraws the image on screen. So when you watch a 24 frames per second movie on a 60 Hz TV, the TV has to figure out how to show 24 frames across 60 refresh cycles. The problem? 24 doesn't divide evenly into 60. The TV uses something called 3-2 pull-down. Some frames get shown for 3 refresh cycles, others for 2. This creates judder, that stuttery, jerky motion you see during slow camera pans in movies. If you've ever noticed that uneven motion during a sweeping landscape shot, that's judder. Now, here's the fix. A 120 Hz TV handles 24 frames per second perfectly. Why? Because 24 divides evenly into 120. Each movie frame gets displayed exactly 5 times. No judder, no stutter, just smooth, cinematic motion exactly as the director intended. If you're a movie lover who watches a lot of films, a 120 Hz TV will give you the cleanest, most authentic viewing experience, period. 30 Hz, the broadcast standard. 30 frames per second is everywhere in television. Live news broadcasts, reality TV shows, talk shows, older YouTube videos. Most broadcast television content runs at 30 frames per second. The good news? Almost every modern TV is at least 60 Hz, and 30 divides perfectly into 60. Each frame gets shown twice. No problems, no judder, everything works smoothly. If you're watching 30 frames per second content on a 120 Hz TV, each frame gets repeated 4 times. Still smooth, still clean. Bottom line, for casual TV watchers, 30 frames per second content works perfectly on any modern TV. You don't need to worry about this one. 50 Hz, the European standard. If you live in Europe, the UK, Australia, Asia, or most of Africa, you've probably encountered 50 Hz content. Those regions use a different electrical system, and their TV broadcasts run at 25 frames per second instead of 30. Sports broadcasts, local TV shows, and regional content are often shot at 25 frames per second. A 50 Hz TV refreshes 50 times per second, which matches 25 frames per second content perfectly. Each frame shows twice. But here's the problem. A 50 Hz TV struggles with 24 frames per second movies and 60 frames per second gaming. That's why most modern TVs in these regions are now 100 Hz or 120 Hz. They can handle both local broadcasts at 25 frames per second and international content at 24 or 60 frames per second. If you live in Europe, the UK, or Australia, look for a 100 Hz or 120 Hz TV. It'll handle everything smoothly. 60 Hz, the standard workhorse. 60 Hz has been the default TV refresh rate for decades, and it's still the most common refresh rate on budget and mid-range TVs today. A 60 Hz TV works great for 60 frames per second sports broadcasts, 30 frames per second TV shows, and gaming on older consoles like PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. But 60 Hz has 3 major limitations. First, movie judder. As we talked about earlier, 20 frames per second movies don't divide evenly into 60 Hz. You get that stuttery motion during slow pans. Second, gaming limitations. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X can output 120 frames per second in supported games, but a 60 Hz TV can't display it. You're capped at 60 frames per second, leaving half your console's performance on the table. Third, motion blur. Because each frame is held for about 17 milliseconds, fast-moving objects look blurry. Sports, action movies, fast-paced games, they all suffer from motion blur on 60 Hz displays. For casual viewers who watch cable TV and Netflix on older consoles, 60 Hz is fine. You'll save money and won't notice the difference. If you're a movie enthusiast who cares about cinematic quality, a 120 Hz TV. It eliminates judder and delivers smooth, authentic film playback. If you're a console gamer with a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, 120Hz with HDMI 2.1, this unlocks 120 frames per second gaming, variable refresh rate, and low input lag for gaming. If you're a PC gamer with a high-end rig, 144Hz or 240Hz, but only if your graphics card can actually push those frame rates. If you watch a lot of sports or fast-action content, 120Hz. The reduced motion blur makes a huge difference. Refresh rate isn't just a spec, it's the difference between a smooth, immersive experience and a blurry, stuttery mess. 24 frames per second content needs 120Hz for perfect playback. 60Hz is the bare minimum for casual use. 120Hz is the sweet spot for gaming, sports, and movies. And anything above 144Hz is overkill, unless you're a competitive PC gamer. And remember, ignore the marketing lies. Motion rate, true motion, and motion flow are fake numbers designed to trick you. Always check the native refresh rate. If you found this helpful, hit the like button. And if you want more videos breaking down confusing tech specs in simple terms, subscribe. Now, while we're on the topic of TV specs that sound complicated but actually aren't, let's talk about panel types. You know those letters you see everywhere? OLED, QLED, Mini LED, LCD? Most people have no idea what they mean or why they matter. In the next video, I'll explain every panel type in the simplest way possible, what each one does, which one's best for your needs, and which marketing terms are just hype. Click the video on screen right now and I'll see you